Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network, where we connect into a matrix of newsmakers to get to the heart of an issue. And watch out, they've got to answer in 25 seconds or less, or else. Let's take a look at that issue right now. From Thailand to Cuba, Brazil to Morocco, sex tourism is lucrative. Websites hawk erotic escapes, while authorities in impoverished lands are tempted to look the other way. Despite occasional high-profile arrests of tourists preying on minors,
I dreamed of a dragon.
UNICEF estimates more than 1 million children are drawn into the sex trade every year. This woman in Brazil started selling herself at 12, her dreams already broken back then.
Eles disseram que iam buscar gringo para mim, para namorar comigo, para cuidar de mim. Eu fiquei feliz da vida. Até hoje eles foram e não voltaram mais.
In Morocco, a Belgian TV crew with a hidden camera is offered sex with children. This in-flight video warns tourists against sexually abusing children. But how effective is that kind of scare tactic? Now, wired into this edition of The Network is, from Bangkok, Amelie McCoy, Child Protection Specialist at UNICEF's East Asia and Pacific Regional Office. From the European Parliament here in Brussels, Ariane Couvreur, Project Manager of ECPAT, which stands for End Child Prostitution, Child Pornography and Trafficking of Children for Sexual Purposes. And from Uppsala, Sweden, Cecilia Wikström, MEP from the group of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, also a member of the Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee. Welcome all of you to the show. Let me start with a first question to all of you. More than 100 countries have signed the UN Convention's optional protocol, which is to fight child sex tourism, among other things, since 2002. Why are there still 2 million children victims a year? Why has it failed? Why have perhaps you failed?
Actually, I'm not sure that that would be an indication of failure. I think that actually across the globe, more governments and more private sector companies, more organizations are working very hard to address this issue. The difficulty is actually that once law enforcement capacity and legislation is strengthened in one part of the world or in one particular country, then child sex offenders tend to gravitate towards other areas where protection is quite a bit weaker.
Thank you, Amelie. To Ariane.
I perfectly agree with what Amelie said, and I would add that child sex tourism is a very lucrative market. So there are millions and millions that are every year, I would say, engendered by the child sex tourism, and so that makes it also very difficult to fight it, because it's a very important business.
Well, yeah, the thing is that you're saying almost that you're helpless. Cecilia, do you feel helpless as a policymaker?
Well, I do not. I really do not. Of course, this is a very difficult matter, but it has to be addressed. And now remember that this is for the first time ever that we are introducing child sex tourism in EU legislation. So within this issue, this dossier, we are hitting at the problem. And keep in mind that we are putting in legislation concerning 27 member states and 500 million Europeans. So we are really making a difference.
Okay. Let's go back to you, Ariane. How often do tourism authorities look the other way? Which countries are looking the other way?
I don't think that we can stigmatize countries, but it's true that as it's very lucrative, it's very difficult to apply laws and sometimes to hide this reality. But I would give an example of Cambodia, which actually fights very seriously this problem and want to change the reputation, and is very active in prosecuting offenders.
Okay, Amelie, you've talked to me about this before, about the lack of media coverage in a number of countries. What about that aspect? Are there some that see that as taboo, or they're afraid of perhaps hurting their tourist business?
That can definitely be an issue. I think this is a very sensitive issue because it deals with sex and also deals with sexual relations with children. So media outlets are quite still sensitive about trying to cover this issue. But when it is covered, the reports are mainly about Western child sex offenders who come to the region. But if you look at the numbers of international travelers who come to Southeast Asia, they're mainly from East Asian countries. They're not from Western countries. And there's a feeling that actually most child sex offenders are actually locals or they're from East Asian countries. And yet that coverage is not coming up.
Cecilia, let's talk about action. What action is the European Parliament going to take on this month, I think?
So, what we did, we have one directive on human trafficking, and that's important. So this will be the second directive, hitting right at the spot, criminalizing sex offenses, child pornography, child abuse, and also for the first time starting to talk about grooming and what grooming is all about.
Okay, Ariane, for those who don't know what grooming is, can you explain what that is?
It's actually seducing a child via the new technologies, and so to get him or her do what the perpetrator or offender wants to do.
Do you mean online?
Online chat, for example. This is what. Yeah.
But grooming has also. Grooming has also to be addressed in real life as well as online, because grooming is taking place where I am and where you all are, and on the internet. So what is illegal in real life has to be illegal on the internet.
Okay, Amelie, let me ask you.
This has been our aim, but it has been very difficult to get a broad consensus on it within the Council, I must say that. But now we have managed, and it has been a lot of very hard work.
Amelie, do you think that the European Union and other forces in the world should tie their development aid to how much a country is participating or cooperating in trying to fight sex tourism?
Well, I think that's a difficult thing to say, because actually some countries are quite proactive in trying to arrest child sex offenders. And we've seen a growing number of arrests in this region. But actually, if you're being proactive and taking some positive action on the issue, will you be penalized for actually doing so? It may seem that you have a significant problem with the numbers of child sex offenders in your country, but it could be that you're just being proactive about the issue. It's very difficult to actually try and gauge how proactive countries are being, because the national level you can have excellent legislation and excellent capacity, but it's actually down to the local level and how effective law enforcement is and how effective service providers are in actually dealing with this problem.
Okay, Ariane, do you think people should be named and shamed, sex tourists?
I don't think it's that publicity is always preferable for that kind of thing, because as it is sexual, it's very intimate. But I'm sure that it has to be to go to the media that people are punished for that kind of crimes, and that can happen for the people, the potential sex offenders. That's a way to try to avoid this. But for the victims, certainly not. Media coverage is not something that will help them, I would say.
Okay, Amelie, let me go back to you. What do you think about the argument by some that it's a cultural difference, that some societies are more permissive, that the age of consent is lower? What do you think?
I think that's a very weak argument, actually, and it's something that is often used as an excuse by child sex offenders who are traveling from Western nations or from other countries to poorer countries, saying, well, this is acceptable here. Actually, there's no evidence to show that parents or families in developing countries love their children any less.
Okay, Cecilia, the European Parliament is going to take action, the EU is going to take action. What's the next step after this?
We have EU legislation for the first time ever, and I'm really proud of that. It doesn't solve the problem, but it adds a piece to the solution. But as somebody already mentioned, this is also a problem that has to be addressed not only through legislation, but we have to change the attitude.
Cecilia, thanks very much. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's all the time we've got for now. I'd like to thank our guests, Amelie McCoy, Ariane Couvreur, and Cecilia Wikström. Until next time, I'm Chris Burns. Thanks for connecting with The Network.